I want to talk about 12 kind of critical success factors that can, both build a sustainable brand into the future and really, I think, help you to ensure you have the right priorities over time. These 12 things can't be done all at once. It's not a, one size fits all, but there's individual adaptation for every brand. And so I wanted to introduce what we call the X factor. And you could say that the successful outcomes we're trying to drive. This is brand and category leadership. This is market share and mind share. This is revenue, growth, loyal customer following, all the things that every brand wants. How to get there, we would state that there's about 12 building blocks. Now, you could argue these should be called differently, or there might be more or less, but for brevity's sake, 12 is a lot. So we want to kind of walk through some of these. We had another presenter today, in addition to Frank Imler, who will be joining me in a moment, but he is stuck in Hawaii. He was on Maui in Kaanapali, and he told us that on Monday the power went out and they thought, we'll go to the beach. That sounds fun. And they get back and there's still no power. And Tuesday they say, hey, I think we'll go to the beach. And they come back because the tides were surging. And at about noon, their hotel said, prepare to shelter in place. And then about an hour later, they said, evacuate now. And so he left and sheltered at a church building for about a day or two, and then found a one-room Airbnb for 10 people until they got kicked out of that because they said, well, you're above occupancy limits. And they're like, the island is burning. And so they left, and we're lucky to get a flight to Oahu and be able to spend the last several days there with his family. But pretty much the whole vacation was on fire. And so he's not with us today, but in spirit, he sent a few of his slides, which I'll cover as well. So apologize that I'll be on that topic as well, but we hope to hit on a few points. We're going to go deep on creative, and we're going to go deep on SEO and how it can really supercharge performance of a campaign. But before that, I just want to just touch on a couple of topics. The first is research and design. When you think about going to market, you're thinking about who is our audience, who are our competitors, what's the landscape look like. We want to understand share of voice and wallet, what mind share you occupy in terms of that consumer. You want to be thinking about what your value proposition is, everything from point of purchase design to packaging. All things considered, this is something that every brand works with, and we've developed a couple of tools that, again, we'll share this presentation. Google's been fantastic to provide us these type of persona research for any brand, any category that brings forward a lot of data, which can be extremely helpful. Additionally, we're familiar with personas that we can go deep on and understand motivating factors. Why would somebody, recarpet a bedroom? Why would they remodel a kitchen? Why do they need to buy a new car? Understanding that at a deeper level matters. This next piece of a strategic roadmap, this is really where the business goals and objectives align with marketing goals and objectives. And you really want to be thoughtful about what is that comprehensive marketing strategy. I've worked with so many brands over the years to understand there's what's called random acts of marketing, which is like random acts of God. You never know where they're going to strike. Unfortunately, for instance, for those in Maui. But you have an opportunity to take back control. It doesn't mean you're inflexible, but it means you have a plan. And you've looked forward over the next several months or a year or two and say, this is our objective. Now, how we get there might change, but the objective's the same. With that, we look at a couple of tools that I'll share with you here. We'll do some annual marketing planning to say business and marketing and digital objectives. What were the results and how does that compare? Benchmarks. What are we hoping to achieve before we go into any campaign? How have we defined success? What's minimal success look like? And what does the upper end look like from a top, middle, and bottom funnel? And it's important to define that and have an active conversation with the team. We then will do somewhat comprehensive customer journey mapping. So this is being able to think all the way from awareness to loyalty. Now, you've heard this all day long of all the touch points to conversion, and we've talked digital. Well, here's the secret. most of your customer interactions are with you and your website and your email, and nothing that we've talked about today with paid digital. It's on you to provide an exceptional experience. And you have to think about each and every interaction and what you're doing to win that much more loyalty, but really provide value. What are you doing to provide that exceptional experience? And you have to think through each and every interaction. I'm not going to spend time on this, but there is a high-end 5-star luxury community in St. George that we assisted with this on. And you can see at each stage in the journey, we thought, what were the motivating factors? What are the potential touch points? How can we help that brand win? We're going to have Frank Imler, our creative director, talk about, I think, some pretty compelling data. I think you're going to like this, and it's really the difference of you can have good placement. You can make sure it's the exact target audience, and then you say, well, why isn't it working? What's wrong with performance? And often, maybe we haven't connected in the right way, in an emotional way. Maybe we haven't hit stride with how we represent the brand, both visually and from a talk track perspective. And so he's got some key points that he wants to talk with you about.
As creative director, I get to say that there's nothing more efficient than creative advertising. Creative advertising is way more memorable, it lasts longer, it works with less media spending, and it builds communities, fan communities, way faster. And that's what I want to talk about today, and how you can start implementing that in your own brands, in your own marketing teams, and hopefully with Max Connect. There's several lab studies that you can find out there that will talk about how it gets more attention, how creative advertising leads to more positive attitudes about your product and your brand. It builds brand loyalty, and of course it always does wonders for your sales. I've been following this Harvard Business Review, and it was really interesting. They took 5 years and they collected tons of ads, and they categorized them into 5 different dimensions. And they learned what worked and what didn't. And I'm going to show you a slide here in a minute of their results and talk about each of those dimensions. And what was really interesting is when they combined different dimensions of these advertising, what worked, what didn't, and how we can implement them into what you're doing. But first of all, creativity. What is it? Is it just the fact that you can draw or play piano or write a book? Really, creativity is had by all of us. When we were born, we're all born wildly creative. We didn't care about anything. We just did what we wanted to do. If we wanted to draw, we drew on the wall. And then what happened? Your mom, your dad, your grandma comes in and she says, "Don't draw on the wall. It's bad. You can't do that." And then fear starts to creep in, and we start to put boxes around how we think and about how we apply our ideas, and we start to conform. And as we grow up, that happens more and more and more, and we start to lose our creativity. But I'm here to tell you that creativity is for everybody, because honestly, creativity is just thinking differently. The saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm not really an advocate for skinning cats, but there's more than one way to solve a problem. And creativity is nothing more than just solving a problem differently. And you can do it in advertising. It's really just doing something that's different or novel or unusual. So those 5 dimensions I mentioned earlier, fascinating study. The 5 different elements are, first, originality. And that's really the basis of creativity. Has elements that are rare or surprising or that move away from obvious or commonplace. So when you see an ad, you go, "Oh, I haven't seen that before. That's new. That catches my attention. I like that idea." Or you can take a product or an idea and you can show how it's flexible. Some ads use flexibility to say, like, this ad or this product or this brand works in all kinds of different ways. You can use it for almost anything. Some of these dimensions you probably can already see are going to work better than others. Elaboration is one of the strongest ones. Elaboration is when you take a simple idea and you expand upon it. You make it more complex. So maybe your brand has a particular value or has a particular cause or theme that it is really passionate about. There are great ways that we can expand upon that we can elaborate on those ideas and make them way more interesting. And we're going to talk about a lot more of that here in the future. Synthesis is an interesting idea where you take normally unrelated objects and you put them together to make something new and interesting and completely original. And then, of course, artistic value is it beautiful? Was the voiceover handled miraculously? Was the music original and beautiful? Was it inspiring visually? Was there some sort of aesthetic that was really pleasing? So this Harvard study tracked these ads over 5 years. They watched what combinations worked better than others, and here's the results. So as you can see, over on the that side, originality was dominant. And in fact, when paired with elaboration or artistic value, ads were 80-90% way more effective in advertising compared to those who used just flexibility or synthesis, right? So flexibility was, let's show that we can be everything to everybody. That's not the strongest way to go. Or trying to compare really wacky ideas together. Sometimes it gets ideas, but it's not always the best. But originality, consistently, when paired with other dimensions, really ruled the day. And I want to spend a lot of time on elaboration as well. So what could that elaboration be? When we set out to launch our product or launch our service, launch our business, a lot of times we say if we have a minimal viable product, it's functional. We've got a product, it works, we can do it, we can sell it, go. Then later on in our marketing, we're going to prove that it's reliable, we're going to prove that it's usable. And so a lot of companies, they kind of stop there. But I propose that your brand or your product or your service also needs a delight factor. That's where emotion comes in. That's where people get connected to what you're offering and who you are. This is where your brand has a personality to it, and people are connecting to you on an emotional level. When people can connect to other people on an emotional level, they're more forgiving. They're more, loving of who they are and what they stand for. And people have been found to get behind brands the exact same way. Even in the B2B community, I found is very astounding that it's just as effective in the B2B community. If you think about it, if you're a consumer and you buy a shirt, and maybe you love the brand, and you get the shirt, it turns out it doesn't fit or you hate it, you send it back, you get your money back, no big deal. But if in a B2B purchase, it's thousands of dollars. It affects not only just you, it affects your division, it could affect your entire company. So there's more at stake, and there's more money at stake, and you can't necessarily just send it back and get your money back. So that purchasing power is crucial, that there's an emotional appeal to it to really drive and connect with these brands. So what are some ways in which we can use emotion into our brand and into our creative messaging? First, one great way is to create an identifiable character. And there's no other industry that's better at this than insurance. They got geckos, they have cavemen, they have ducks, they have flow and mayhem. And it's fascinating to think about the stories that each individual tells. So for example, if I wanted to buy insurance and I didn't know much about insurance, Flo and her team tells me that they're super nerdy about insurance. They know everything there is about insurance. They talk it, they dream it, they eat it, they sleep it, and they would love to just talk to your ear off about insurance. So if I'm hesitant or I don't know, the people at Progressive are super knowledgeable and they're super easy to talk to. So that's how they communicate with their customers. Mayhem, for example, uses a kind of the doomsday approach, right? So if you're the kind of person who's, oh man, anything could go wrong. My neighbor's tree is getting humongous. It might land on my house. What's going to happen? And you're really focused upon those worries. They use that emotion to relate to their customers, to illustrate the beautiful commercials that are Allstate, and they entertain us with Mr. Mayhem. Another way to include emotion into your brands and in your advertising is to tell an emotional story. And there's way more emotions than just happy or sad, right? So it's not just about, the sob stories of when, a dad comes home from war, and you can interject your message or your brand into that. You can use humor or other things as well. Does anybody remember this commercial from way back in the day when remote started taking over the market? And this little boy is in his Darth Vader costume, and he's standing around his house, and he's trying to use the Force on everything, on the dog, on his sister's toys and everything. And he was getting frustrated, and so he comes home, and he uses it on his dad's car, and his dad from the kitchen window starts it with the remote, and the kid's like, "What? It worked! How did that happen?" Right? So they created a moment, right? Like they used a cool new feature, and they added some emotion into it, and it's one of the most memorable things ever, and it works super well. This is another thing I like a lot. You don't necessarily have to have a long film or a long video to tell emotion. You can tell emotion within stories just by how you name your products. There's a sunglass company, Gooder, and every product has a story. For example, this particular set of sunglasses is called Whiskey Shots with Satan. So I've never taken whiskey shots with Satan, but I can imagine, it's a lot like wearing these sunglasses. I don't know. But if you go on their website, you look through all their sunglasses, like every single one is uniquely named, and it kind of works with like the color of the lenses and the frames, and then even the guy down at the bottom, like he looks like he could take a few shots with Satan, and it works. Like, this is really unique. This is really interesting. Like, I've ordered a pair. It's coming soon, and I took the screenshot 2 days ago. So yeah, it's really powerful. It's really memorable. The thing about emotion is that, remember, people don't necessarily remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And you can use that in your messages with your customers. Last, you can create a community with a cause. Subaru is a great example of this. They give tons of money to charity. They talk about it. They give money to pets and all sorts of different communities, and that's what they're all about. And they tout it. And especially young people nowadays, they they follow brands, not necessarily because of what they sell, but what they're about, what the brand cares about, and that's how they get excited. So pick a cause and go for it, and tell that story, and bring your customers along with you. So when you think about your minimum viable product, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's just, does it function, let's ship it. I would say, is it also reliable? Is it also usable? And have a plan of how you can add a little bit of delight to your brand as well, so that you don't just have a product, you have a whole plan. So in most cases, companies have found, this is from the Harvard Business Review, that they are investing in creativity, and that's completely true. Increased investment will usually pay for itself. And time and time again, I've seen that in my career. So to wrap it up and give it back to Phil, we need to know who our customers are. We need to know what they care about. We need to know that whole customer journey. We saw an example of it a couple times today. We need to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling before they start looking, all the way through when they start searching, once they're interacting with us, and how they feel afterwards. And as you start to map it, you'll see there's low points and there's high points. And you can advertise and use emotional messages in both, right? You can show them that we've been there, we get it. We've had backed up toilets, we've had a hard time looking for a car, whatever it is that you're selling, we've been there, we get it, and we have a product or a service that will help you through it. Find those moments in which you can emotionally have a connection with your customers, and you'll see great things. Thank you.
Okay, quick survey. I want to just touch on what Frank spoke on. Who knows here what liquid death is? By show of hands, liquid death. You've never heard of liquid death? Okay, we're going to pick on Harvey Scott for a moment. Harvey Scott, when I say liquid death, what do you think comes to mind? What is it? Drinking something that sucks, okay. If it was a brand, or it was selling product, what do you think it would be? Okay. Pre-workout energy. So around my office, I wish I had a visual. Taylor Smaley in our team. Oh, he's right there. So for about 3 or 4 months, I had heavy judgment on him. He'd come in at 9 or 10 in the morning. Most people have a Monster. They're slamming Mountain Dew. He had this drink called Liquid Death, and I'm thinking, is that alcohol? Is he doing like tequila shots before 10 or 11 a.m.? I had no idea. And I mean, every day without fail, he comes into the office with Liquid Death. I didn't know what it was. And finally one day we had a conversation. He's like, dude, it's water. I'm like, what? He said, it's water. And I just want to share some stats about this company called Liquid Death. Started in 2018. Its brand mantra is creative, raw, unapologetic, original, hilarious, authentic, and anti-authoritarian. They have come into space. Next year they'll go public with Goldman Sachs for probably well over $1 billion. They're the fastest growing beverage brand in the world in a category that's already filled to the brim, water, right? Their ability to build a community, they're the #1 most followed beverage brand on TikTok. I mean, so when you talk about creativity matters, if you want to look at a fun brand story, go look at Liquid Death and their ability to just get you to drink their product. I mean, what does it cost, Taylor, for a can? So he's spending, instead of spending like a cent to go fill up the cup at the drinking fountain, he's willing to spend $3 on a drink of water because of Liquid Death, because their creativity and their ability to tell a compelling story is there. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that real quick. I want to spend a moment and just talk about SEO and reputation. When you think about your total digital footprint, it is far beyond your website. Your website might be the foundation block and cornerstone, but who you are online and what people find out about you spans far more than that. It's everything from listing sites to social media sites to YouTube channels to reviews online to Yelp to Google My Business, etc. And it's important to understand what that footprint looks like and what influence you can have. Now, you don't get to control what your total digital footprint looks like, but you can influence it, you can be aware of it. So I want to just talk through a couple of these things. Like I said, Cannon couldn't be here, but he shared with me when you care about a couple of these factors as it relates to your organic health and to SEO, the impact it has on the business. So when your domain authority is at a 21 or higher, you see a 3.8% lift in revenue. When you are ranking with 13,000 plus keywords, your growth for this particular scenario was phenomenal, over 4,000%. Organic traffic of 18,000, again, seeing a percentage growth year over year of over 5% or 5,000%. And then just that SEO monetary value. When we think about SEO, we think about where we're ranking on the internet, and it's important to be there. Well, it can drive a whole lot of conversions. In fact, most brands say, wow, one of my best converting channels is always SEO. How do we get more SEO traffic? And the answer is investing in good content, investing in what others are saying about you, and continuing to put the user at the center in all that you do to say, how do I add value? Whether we meet them at your site, on your home page, on a blog post, or whether we meet them elsewhere on the internet. And so the power of strategic investment for organic visibility, just as a quick visual here, you can see as the number of keywords that you're ranking for, it has a slightly higher effect or increase from an acceleration perspective on SEO traffic, as well as that monetary value of SEO. And so there's as it relates to SEO, every dollar you put in, usually you're pulling out $2 to $3. And different than paid, it's not a rent a space for a month. It can go on for years and years and years in terms of the SEO value that you're building. Domain authority. Again, this just goes to the point, a lot of new websites, when you stand up a new URL, a new website, you might be a domain authority of 20 or 30, and that's out of 100. You get a CNN.com, and that's maybe 98, 99 domain authority. Most websites, if you're not on a national level, they're probably on a good day in the 40s, even up in the 50s. And so it's important to note that there's immense opportunity and a direct relationship with what that return on investment can provide you. The other thing I just wanted to mention with SEO, when SEO is combined with paid, and so often, and this is unfortunate, but when clients are trying to make choices and trade-offs, they're saying, do I spend money on SEO or do I spend money on paid? And sometimes we have to make those tough decisions. Hopefully, most of the time, there's an opportunity to do both. And we see that when you're running SEO only, there's certain kind of factors from domain authority, ranking keywords, monetary value of SEO. When you couple it with paid efforts and you run those two simultaneously, I love the fact that our paid and SEO teams work hand in hand. They say to the paid team, hey, what are the words that are ultimately defining the majority of the conversions over the last several months? And we're going to go build content and invest in that. And it's going to have a tremendous impact for years to come. And so thinking about just that ability to share data between your SEO and paid teams and really understand what's influencing, what's converting. And I think SEO can have a lot of triggers along the way that are great data sets for the paid side. One last thing I'll say. A lot of our clients will say, boy, whenever we spend on branded terms, and if you don't know what that means, let's say you're Liquid Death. And if you say, okay, if I'm Liquid Death, I'm willing to go spend $1.50 every time somebody types in Liquid Death, and I'll be a sponsored ad on Google, and they'll click on it. And they'll most likely come by. And you kind of say, well, duh, they were looking for you. Of course they're going to buy, right? And we have a lot of brands say, well, how do we increase the number of branded searches? Like, that seems like the gold mine. If we spend money on paid, if we have traffic come in organically, that's where it's at. And the answer is SEO matters and paid search matters, but what really matters is everything we've spoken about today, building brand in the right way, alerting those potential audiences and consumers across video, connected TV, programmatic display, social. You have to go introduce yourselves to them. And what's interesting, there's always that tie of whenever you're investing in brand in that higher funnel, middle funnel, you see branded searches skyrocket, and that always equals greater opportunity for growth. So key takeaways, SEO gets results. Number 2, the more you invest, the better you perform. Number 3, SEO and paid, there's a lot of upside there. Now, I want to just spend the last few minutes, and happy to take some questions as well. I want to just talk about, and we've spent some time on this today, sometimes people ask us, well, what leads to a good paid campaign? What are you doing? And Google, had some fantastic ideas around AI can do a lot. And companies ask us to say, how much of your technology is AI? Is this people pushing it? Is it just systems and machines? And our answer is usually fourfold. It's architecture, it's people, it's kudos that Devin spoke on earlier in partnerships. I want to start with partnerships. We're not an agency without incredible brands to work with. And those partners that know how to invest in the right ways, how to grow their business, and build an incredible product, that's what matters first and foremost. Number 2, aligned objectives and outcomes. When you and an agency or you and your marketing team have aligned objectives, as Greg McEwen spoke about earlier, when you're really clear on your priorities and what doesn't matter. When you can understand what that is and you say, if nothing else happens in the next 6 months, what would you consider success to be? When you can both agree on that answer, that's important. And then lastly, we kind of talk about a little bit of a bullseye as it relates to alignment of that brand and performance. When you aren't just focused on the immediate win, but you're looking long term. You're looking ahead to say, I want to own this market. I don't need to just make $1 more this month. It's more important for me, to kind of win the war. Going to kudos, Devin spoke on this already. This is the data you use, the attribution from a customer perspective, as well as those analyses and insights. People, the way that we structure teams, so this could be every single member of our digital team. A large part of their compensation comes from how well campaigns perform. We want them to have skin in the game. We want them to be paid when things aren't going as well and rewarded when things go better. The culture and experience that's brought as well. And then lastly, just architecture. It's funny, we'll sit down and go and review accounts when we begin to work with a new client, and we'll see that accounts are set up certain ways. And often it's here's a campaign, here's a few audiences and some ads that we'll associate with that. And there might be 3 or 4 campaigns. By the time our digital team's usually done in rebuilding the campaigns the way that we think should be structurally done, there's anywhere between 70 to 100 campaigns. And the reason we do that is so we can test every hypothesis over time. We can start with audiences, and we know which creative piece is working with which audience and what's responding. We can test message, we can test offers. And so being able to turn on and off certain data sources matters. Being able to turn on and off certain pieces of creative matters. And so just how you structure campaigns matters a lot as well, in addition to optimization. So we've spoken to a lot of this already, so I'm going to jump ahead. The last thing I'll just say is have a little bit of patience. Understand that good things take time. I was with a client yesterday that, I won't tell you who, but have spent years perfecting this direct response campaign. I mean, they send out direct mail and they rake in millions a week. And it's incredible. Now they spend millions a month. And what they have found is there's a formulaic response of they buy data from the credit bureau, they take that data, they go have a mailer and an offer, it goes out, and within 4 weeks, they know that it's something along the lines of $146 for new customer acquisition. And it's great. But they've started to hit a wall of growth, and they're not able to easily expand beyond the certain states that they're in due to licensing. And so now they're saying, well, maybe we should consider digital. We started to work with them 45 to 60 days ago. And we had a call yesterday where we kind of did a little bit of a level set where they said, well, why aren't we achieving $146, cost of acquisition right now? And the question was, how many years did it take for you to refine that direct response piece? How many years was that channel stood up to get it right? And they said, well, yeah, it was 2, 3, 4 years, and we finally got there. And have some patience as you're trying new things. Don't just throw out the baby with the bathwater within the first month or two. Give yourselves a little bit of time. Be patient. Know that as good things take time, results will come. If you're doing it right, you're being intentional, and you're leading with the best aspects of your brand, and make sure that that growth mindset's along the way. A few other thoughts. I want to be sensitive to time. We think about traditional media. There are some fantastic opportunities as we think guerrilla marketing, as we think out of home, as we think reaching a broader audience. And so when you think traditional, it can mean billboard. And if you're new to a market, if you're thinking directional signage, if you're a physical location, it can be powerful. And it certainly has its place. A couple of other quick things we'll speak on. PR and earned media. Nothing validates, I think, a brand more than being on the front page of their respective industry publication where it says, must have for overlanders. And all of a sudden, every overlander's thinking, wow, how do I go get one of those? And it's important to think about how you're respected, not only among your peers, but it's the industry validating who you are and what you stand for. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity through that. We've tried to do it ourselves. We actually sponsor a race team. I don't know how many of you knew that, but they, over the last couple of years, have had 3 podium finishes at Le Mans. If you've ever seen Ford versus Ferrari. And the last 2 years we were first place, which is pretty exciting. And so those type of opportunities we've taken up to have an opportunity to not only be a good partner, but also look at some earned media awards and recognitions. A few other things, I want to tell you a story. So Devin earlier talked about Nike, and I'm going to bring them up in a moment. So I take my kids to the Jazz game, and since I'm buying the tickets, they're not only in the upper section of the Jazz game, we're talking tip top of the arena, like we were 3 from the very top nosebleed, and the elevation was high. And we did it because it was the Ford fan zone. So it's bring your kids, buy 6 tickets, all you can eat hot dogs and hamburgers and slushies and all the things that kids love. And so I'm thinking, this is going to be great. We have tickets, we have free food. They're not going to nag me to go buy something. We're great. So we get settled in our seats. I'm finally watching the game. Well, I'm watching the Jumbotron, which is watching the game. And I start to get nagged by my kids to say, Dad, we need you right now. And I said, we're watching the game. You got your food. What else do you need? And they said, you need to come give them your email address. And I thought, oh no, I know what this is. And so they drag me out of my seat. I go to the Ford fan zone, and they say, for your kid to win the right to have a Ford sticker or a Ford pair of socks or a Ford cup, we need to get all your personal consumer data and to see if you're willing to buy a Ford in the next 6 months. So I fill out all of the information, sign over my first child, and by the end of it, my kids walked out with some swag. We call that brand activation. It's about meeting people where they're at, giving them an experience. My kids love Ford just because of that experience, and it's an opportunity through sponsorships of events, of teams, of being there in person. It's powerful, giving you a kind of front row experience with a brand. Along with brand activation, we think about social media. One of our clients that we love working with is Splenda. We're doing some incredible things with them of trying to make, when I first thought of Splenda and we started to work with them, I was thinking, I go to a restaurant and it's what, older people like to use instead of sugar. And now I realize there is an absolute revolution in what they're able to do with drinks, with products, with, diabetic, all sorts of diets. It's remarkable. And how they've told their story has been powerful, and we've sought to amplify it through social. Hold on one second. A couple other quick things. Lids is a brand that we've worked with. And when you think about the wintertime and you think about an opportunity to provide some sort of brand activation, even at retail. So you can see this example here. It looks like it's, the things hanging off a Christmas tree and ornaments, and kind of opportunities to kind of tie in to who you are as a brand and kind of seasonal moments. CRO nurturing. When you're doing everything else well, you're investing a lot of money and you have good creative, the question is, how can this work better? If our conversion rate is 2.2% online, how do we make it 3.2% online? And that's where CRO comes in. So it's everything from landing pages to mobile pages to heat mapping, everything that a person's doing. Did you know you can essentially video record as if you were sitting behind somebody and see their exact clicks, movements, what they're typing in, and be able to get all of that qualitative data, which gives you an immense opportunity to know how to navigate what to do next and where to pivot from the type of content that you have on your landing pages. When we think about email nurturing flows, do you have a strategy across all of your customer segments and behaviors? If they open this email, then you send this one, and that's based on this behavior if they clicked on that link. That can be powerful, and it's important to think holistically. Email database and database marketing is the most underappreciated, channel in marketing. It certainly is the most leverageable, and when done right, it can provide immense ROI. Just a couple other things. Affiliates and influencers. So when you think about affiliates and influencers, there's a lot of ways to reach out, to have brands represent you. I'm sure that Liquid Death has a lot of affiliates and influencers associated with them. This is just an example with our client Lids, their ambassador program. You can get a lot of incredible content created with your product and have others be talking about you and validating you online with those kind of relationships. I just want to talk about 2 more things. analytics and attribution. Devin did an excellent job talking about kudos earlier, and I won't spend too much more time there. But again, an incredible opportunity to see your marketing at work, getting a singular vantage point of the customer from multiple platforms that we've integrated with. And then Ryan Robler in automotive talked about this as well. I think when you can take a bigger picture, we work with a local community theater here called Hell Center Theater. They do a remarkable job putting on Broadway-like quality with those in the community and talent. And we build this for them every year. And it's remarkable to look back to see the millions of individuals and impressions that have been reached, the number of clicks and visits driven, but most importantly, the transactions. And being able to kind of look high level on marketing and seeing its kind of ripple effect from brand to performance. Last thing I want to talk about, I want to tell just a quick story. This shoe here isn't mine, it's Devin's dad's shoe that he told us about earlier. But my son, he had his eye on a pair of shoes like this, and of course we said no. But he got a pair of Dunks, and he was joining a basketball team a couple of months ago. He's 9. And, you know, he's headed out to practice after he's had these shoes for a couple of days. And he says to me, what shoes should I wear? You know, I don't have any that fit me. And we said, we just got you a brand new pair of Dunks. And he kind of looked at me and almost rolled his eyes in the pre-teenage fashion. He said, Dad, I'll get crease marks. Like, I can't wear my Dunks to practice. I got to keep those nice. And I had no idea that Nike had built a multi-billion-dollar brand where kids will just buy shoes, and not just kids, big kids, adults, even Devin, and put them on their shelf and keep them and just look at them, and because they're collectibles. And what an incredible amount of loyal following Nike has built. They are churning out tens of billions of dollars of profit every quarter. The shoe game's off the hook right now. And I think that's just an example of the kind of loyalty that they've been able to build. So as you think about customer loyalty, it can be everything from an app. I go and eat at a local restaurant here called Aubergine Kitchen. It's a healthy place that you can go. But I often go there because I know I'm accruing loyalty points. And when I'm making decisions as a consumer, I think, oh, if I go there, I get, another 15 loyalty points and my meal's $20 off. I'm going to go there. And there's some tremendous opportunity if you're a retailer, an e-com brand, an automotive trucking dealership. Anytime you can incorporate loyalty and give people self-interested reasons to come back, it can be powerful. So with that, just in closing, when you're thinking about success, we want you to think far beyond just running paid digital. That's an important aspect of it. But you want to take a step back and say, who are we talking to? Why does it matter? As Frank so eloquently spoke about, be creative, be memorable, be humorous, have a reason to give people an experience, tell a compelling story. I think the reason we loved hearing from Greg McEwen earlier, he just got up here and told stories. When he sent his slides over a week ago, I just laughed. I'm like, it's 5 just slides of scribbles. That's all he needs. And he was up here for an hour and a half, and he just told stories. And that's what people remember. So in closing, we're appreciative that you're here. Thank you for your relationship with the agency. We've certainly appreciated it. And as we wrap up and conclude, we want you to think about marketing in not just a singular sense, running meta ads or running search ads, but taking the time to really understand who you're speaking to, why it matters, and how to add value at every interaction. And with that, I think we're done. Appreciate it.